We're talking about exploration this afternoon, arguably the most important part of the industry itself. If we don't find it, we can't mine it. And if we don't mine it, we're going to deprive the world of the minerals that are foundational elements of all the things that we love and allow humanity to thrive. Here in Australia, of course, if we don't actively support exploration here, within a generation, our standard of living will become pretty much unrecognisable and not in a good way. And of course, those minerals will just be mined elsewhere in the world and potentially with far worse environmental outcomes. So we're all about exploration this afternoon. So would you please join me in welcoming to the stage our guests. Firstly, Steve Beresford, ex-professor and chief geologist at 3 major mining companies and boasts field experience in more than 60 countries around the world. He's currently an active explorer looking for big copper deposits around the world. So thank you, Steve. If you want to head up to the stage. Would you please welcome as well Margie Hawke, Principal Geoscientist at Rio Tinto and discoverer of the DeGrussa deposit as well up in the Pilbara. Thank you, Margie. Dr. Mike Jones, Managing Director at Impact Minerals, team leader during the discovery of a significant gold deposit at the Higginsville Mining Centre near Kalgoorlie, and as well an iron ore deposit up near Newman. Welcome. And finally, our moderator extraordinaire this afternoon, Mark Bennett, Executive Chairman at S2 Resources, a geologist, explorer, company director and investor. He comes with extensive experience in all aspects of financing companies, finding deposits and building mines. So would you please welcome our panel? And Mark, I'll leave things in your capable hands.
So, am I on? Yeah. Right, I have to do something now. This is the first time I've ever been a moderator, or been moderate in anything, actually. We're here to talk about exploration. I just did a quick roughie, and probably between us, we've found things that have generated over $50 billion worth of wealth in WA, which sort of flows through to the whole ecosystem and everyone in this room, and all the schools, roads, hospitals, whatever. So it is the sort of backbone of everything. And we're going to sort of explore what it's all about, how it's done, what the impediments are to it, and what makes the difference between finding these things and not. So we're going to talk about it in terms of a number of ingredients which you need all of to be successful. The first is having the right ground. The second is having the money. The third is having the people to spend the money correctly. There's also the knowledge and the technology, and we'll spend the last sort of 10 minutes or so talking about the secret sauce, the X factor that can make a difference between finding things and not finding things. So I'll need my glasses for this. We're going to talk about briefly land, and we'll have to keep things short because there's a lot more here to talk about than we've got time to talk about. It's Margie's first time on a panel. It's my first time in charge, and it's the first time I've been asking questions of Steve rather than him of me, because Steve is one of the guys behind Exploration Radio, which has about, 40 or 50 episodes of podcasts, which is well worth listening to. So there's 40 or 50 episodes worth of podcasts that we have to try and squeeze into 50 minutes. And Mike Jones, who he and I shared Bucks nights together in Kalgoorlie a long time ago.
What happens in Kalgoorlie?
So the first sort of ingredient in the cocktail is land. If you don't have land and if you don't get access to it, and if you can't do anything on it, not much else happens. And there are various places around the world that are harder and easier to operate in. They all have their own sort of mix of pros and cons. So I'll be asking the panel a couple of questions about what they think the key things are, both in Western Australia and elsewhere, that are good and bad about land and accessing it. And that includes things like native title, heritage, freehold land and private landowners, social trends, because in certain parts of the world there's a lot of NIMBYism these days. I've recently been operating in Victoria, and it's a bloody nightmare compared to here. But here isn't easy either. I used to consider WA the last bastion of sort of common sense in terms of being able to explore and mine. But things are changing, and it's getting harder and harder, and it's making other places in the world more and more attractive. And sure, they don't come without their own risks, but it depends which poison you choose. So I would throw that question initially over to Steve, who's been working in Kazakhstan and Canada, for his view.
Well, the first thing is the standard of pre-competitive data is the highest in the world here in WA and definitely in Australia. So a lot higher standard than even in a country like Canada. So that's the easy part of it. The slow part of it is it's a lot more mature tenure held than any country in the world, more so than Canada. And tenure takes a lot longer to get. Application processes are longer. So there's a speed problem. So I'd turn your question around and say, how do we work faster in this state, knowing full well that we're going to be one of the slowest?
And does anybody on the panel have any suggestions about how we might work faster?
That's a very difficult one to do. My experience over the 20 years plus is that it's just getting harder to work anywhere. Back in the day, you can go to Africa, peg land relatively easily, get in there, do things, quickly and cheaply, probably not to the same safety standards as was required elsewhere, just to generalise, very much. I can use an example there. You talk about freehold land. So we had big ground holdings here in Western Australia. Unlike the rest of Australia, the landowners here on freehold land have basically the right of veto. They own the access rights to the top 30 metres of the ground. And if they don't want you on the ground, there's nothing you can do about it. It's full stop. It's basically a full veto. In the other states, particularly New South Wales that we're familiar with, there's a warden's court which you can go to get access. And there's almost legislated ways of coming up with compensation agreements, because when you've done the freehold negotiations here, you've then got to go through the compensation agreements. Heritage, our actual experience with heritage has actually been pretty good, just by probably chance that the areas that we've worked in, the local Aboriginal communities have been very pro-mining. We're currently working with the Naju group that you've worked with out in Norseman. They're very pro-mining. And the discussions there are actually more about the benefits to the community, because they do realise that there are those benefits to be had. And so nurturing those kind of relationships is almost number one, moving forward. But in general, it's getting harder. How you get around that, it's a political thing, and it's a big thing that a lot of politicians don't want to touch.
Yeah, I find it strange. The traditional owner groups, more often than not, pro-development. But things take a long time to happen for other reasons. It's not because we're not wanted there. One of my companies, we've been negotiating a heritage protection agreement for 4.5 years and just got it signed, paying for lawyers for both sides. And that is just to get the exploration licence application into the department to consider granting. So if you sort of add on things like that incrementally, the time and money it takes to get to the starting line is probably, in my opinion, between 5 and 10 times more than it was 10 years ago. And given that junior companies who aren't exactly flush with cash are the ones who are often on the front line with this, it starves the entire food chain.
No, that's a huge point. Maybe I'm going to turn a question to you. So for those of you who don't know, most of that $50 billion that was discovered was mostly discovered by Mark, and with my $2.50 worth coming in a close second, perhaps. But Mark is an incredibly successful explorer and is most famous for the discovery of the Nova Bollinger mine. And you managed to bring that into production, within 4 years, I think, after the
2.5.
The discovery. 2.5. Well, there we go.
I think Margie beat me at Sandfire by a couple of days.
And that was the next question. It's just like, and Sandfire was the same. So, from both of your perspectives, what were the two key? What were some of the key things that managed you to get through that whole process so quickly, because everyone complains about how long it takes, but you were both obviously clearly well prepared in advance. So maybe, Margie?
We went pretty hard at Sandfire to start with. They had a pretty driven young geologist there just going for it.
Right.
I mean, we had...
Was that you?
Yeah, that was me. I think we had 3 diamond drill rigs out there within 3 months of the first discovery hole. And they were going 24/7. We ramped up very, very quickly, 3 people to over 100 in a couple of years. And the pit was going down at the start of 2011 after the discovery in April 2009. So I can't really comment on all of the legislation and everything that they had to go through to get that through in the office. But in the field, we set a pretty speedy pace to get that thing into operation, despite having the likes of Oceana at the time, or Oz Minerals, can't remember what it was then, come out there and sit there scratching the rocks and everything and plan a takeover of us or something, and that wasn't the way the company wanted to go. I mean, if you're going to find a deposit, then why not take it through to mining? So that was pretty much the attitude there. So we just went hard and fast and
And your planning? Because that was a big thing, I remember discussions we've had.
Yeah,
Environmental,
shifting gears from exploration to drill out to scoping, we went straight to definitive feasibility study because it was a no-brainer. But key things were getting an operational team assembled quickly, getting the finance in place quickly, which was easy. We basically sent a term sheet out to 20 banks and said, if you change one term on this, we're not inviting you to the table. Getting a good agreement with the Naju people, the traditional owners, and importantly, being a small company, being able to negotiate direct from the top of our company rather than through some middle manager. So we showed due respect to them and we could make decisions on the fly with them rather than it going up and down chains. And I think, give credit to the government where it's due. The mines department here is a pretty well-oiled machine. It was essentially a one-stop shop, so you didn't have different agencies clashing with one another to delay the process. So I think all of those things combined.
So just to comment on that, both those deposits are high grade, and if you look at the history of high grade systems, they are quick to develop. A lot of the average statistics that we look at are because these systems are low grade and complex, and they have huge timelines to put into production. But so the answer to me is, why aren't we finding more high grade, or why aren't we looking for it?
Yeah, very good. Yeah, absolutely. So just to finish off on sort of land, I'm just going to ask people their preferred places to explore right now to put them on the spot. In terms of jurisdiction, and it's nothing to do with the Fraser Institute because I think most of us think that's a complete load of nonsense.
Do I go first? I'm the one who's going to get my throat cut. I prefer Quebec. I think that's the best jurisdiction in the world. It's a combination of the right mix of pre-competitive data, Australia's better, but also tax share flow-through share schemes. You just get better bang for your buck.
I don't really have a preference, honestly. I haven't thought about it much. I'm quite happy in Australia. I really enjoyed working in Africa. I thought it was a lot easier to get on the ground over there and do work. And this is just me coming from the position of being an exploration geologist and preferring the technical over everything else. But yeah, Africa, I would definitely go back to. But yeah, this is just my opinion. But
Any particular spots in Africa?
I can't tell you my favourite spots. That's confidential.
Okay.
Well, we worked in Botswana for quite a few years. That was great. We call it Africa Light or Africa 101. It's a very easy place to work compared to the rest of Africa. But as for Quebec, Mark and I went on a field trip back in 1991 there, and I came back with blood dripping down my ears from all the black fly that were biting me during the season. So I decided I never ever want to work in Quebec. And in Impact, we've kind of been around not the whole world, but we've worked in a number of places: Botswana, up in Turkey, all over the place, and really Western Australia and New South Wales would be some of the top places. to get around. You've got the rule of law. It's easy to do. People speak the same language, corruption-free generally, and it's a great place, and that's where we are now. So I could have saved myself a lot of time and effort in the 20 years we've been running Impact.
Yeah, and I'd say, in Australia, certainly WA, followed by New South Wales, which might surprise some people. And I'm talking about an exploration perspective, not necessarily a mine permitting perspective. And then overseas, probably Nevada, Quebec, and Saskatchewan as well. Yeah. Okay, so we could talk a lot more about that, but we haven't got time. I'm going to talk about money next, and it's the ability of explorers to raise capital versus the appetite of the producers to spend it. The explorers don't have it and have the desire to look. The big guys find it easier to buy rather than explore a lot of the time. So they're very different propositions depending on what your company is and who you're working for. And I guess with Margie working for Rio, money's not a problem.
We still have a budget. They still prefer us not to, blow up that budget. But yeah, look, the juniors, we still rely on the juniors a lot to do a lot of their exploration. We're always evaluating their projects and everything. Would you like the comparisons between Rio? I mean, I love working for Rio. We have a big team. We've got people do every job. It's not, your best geo becoming the exploration manager of a junior company and being lumped with everything, and then the first thing that goes is the geology. We have a generative team that we're slightly more removed from having to the community stuff or the environmental or health and safety and all of that. There's someone to do all of that. There's someone to look after the database. It's good, and we just get to do geology.
Yeah.
I've never been happier working for a company.
Excellent. And we'll come on to this when we sort of talk about people and the secret sauce later. But now is a good opportunity to put you on the spot, actually, because rumour has it that in the Sandfire days, that you called Carl up to ask him for more money to drill another hole. And he said yes, and you said, well, that's good because I've just drilled it and I've found DeGrossa.
Well, actually, I was still under budget on my meters when I did drill the discovery hole. So for a bit of the background, I'd been out there working on that project for 2 years, drilled a lot of drill holes out there, we got to the point where we'd finally done multi-element analysis over the top of our best gold project, which was DeGrossa. Gone out there with a 2,000 metre budget, drilled the first hole, it collapsed at 60 metres, thought we'd catch it on the next one, didn't get anything on most of the rest of the drill holes on that program. Drill rig broke the weekend before, or on the last hole. It was the weekend before the long weekend. You could easily just pack up and go home then. But decided not to, thought about it for the weekend. The drillers went back to Kalgoorlie, got the bits to fix their drill rig. And I decided to do one more drill hole on the Monday. So vertical hole exactly where we had the failed hole, thought, well, it should stand up through that brecciated crap. We'll just call it a strat hole and keep on going until they run out of drill rods or I say stop. So we went down, we got through that gold horizon, we went through a whole heap of clays, and at 98 metres we got a whole heap of black dust coming out of the rig, and the drillers were like dragging these bags away from the rig, and it was just all the massive sulphide in that. So yeah, I didn't ask for permission, I justified it being under budget, the rest is history really, because we got 6 holes with 100 metres of massive sulphide in it.
It's scary how much those stories abound.
Yeah, a little bit of serendipity in there.
So, Mike, you're doing a capital raising as we speak, and you're so confident you've just come out to London.
Yeah, that's right. It's
but as a smaller company raising money, describe it.
Yeah, no, it's the biggest challenge of the whole game, as you would well know. And Impact's been around for 20 years, and there's now like 840 odd, resource companies, and so the competition for capital is pretty high. So it's a relentless task. When you finish one capital raise, you're really starting to think about the next one. If you're good at your job and marketing and good relationships, there's always money to be raised, and that's been shown. We're going to raise money today in the middle of really quite difficult times, and we're just doing a small top up to hopefully get ourselves through this period of extreme instability. But you have to manage every dollar, and we're now in development of our high purity alumina project. So there is a bit more access to funding. We've got some government grants in the critical mineral space, which has been very helpful. But the funding of exploration, I'll just make a comment. People often say there's not much exploration going on, or juniors aren't doing very much. If you go to the RIU conference, in Fremantle just last month, there's 300 absolutely passionate managing directors in that place, of all shapes, sizes, genders, who are absolutely loving the exploration game. It's a very thriving environment. It is getting more difficult to work, but in my view, the technical side is great. I'm a technical geologist, but the big game in town is running an exploration company. That's the big game. That's where the challenge is to do the exploration and raise that capital.
And as you'll see, with the exception of Margie, there's 3 grumpy old blokes on the panel. And probably not by chance. We all started off life in bigger companies and went down the food chain. And there's probably a reason for that. We now are in a position in smaller companies where, a lot of the small companies have the brain power that are refugees from the bigger companies, but they don't have the ability to raise the money. And how you go about raising the money, how honest you are, which is not often for a lot of people, and what register of shareholders you have make all the difference. So I had a little chat with Steve earlier. I don't know how much he's happy to talk about in terms of his approach to shareholders or not.
Yeah, look, it's different for different jurisdictions. This is one of the better ones that we should point out in terms of raising money, perhaps the best in the world by a long shot, I would say. We've always had this problem with dishonesty that's everywhere. For me personally, I'm a little bit older now. I'm in this game for discovery and to find the right backers or the right money, not just money. Let's not pretend this is easy. This is a real challenge, but the part of your 3 dynamic of people, land, and money is it's very difficult, perhaps will never happen in our careers, to put all 3 of them together, and that's when the magic starts flying. It's easy to get money, but often for the wrong kind of project or the wrong part of the cycle. So I've got a bit of a controversial view. I think early stage exploration is as low risk as exploration gets, as low as risk as anything in the mining chain. I'm not sure where anybody came up that it was high risk. It's low risk, and we only add risk during the exploration process. And why we've allowed people to be told that, I just do not understand. It's doing us a massive disservice. And of course, that's what's making it hard to raise money, because people have this belief system that early stage exploration is high risk. It's not. It's as low as it's ever going to get.
And having good backers and a good register is probably the most fundamental thing, I think, in terms of getting money and keeping it.
Yeah, so I'm backed at the moment by a few very high profile individuals across the industry. I worked really hard for it, but I'll have to be honest and say I got a cold call one day at Montreal Airport from a very big backer, and that's the sort of thing you want in this life. You want somebody who understands the exploration process and how discovery is going to deliver massive outsized value. You don't want somebody who's playing the game.
Yeah, don't want somebody who's playing the game, and preferably not generalists. They're management intensive, so you want resource specialists who get it.
Yeah, and a little bit of trust. I mean, it's not easy in a big company to extend trust, but in a small, it's based on reputations. People know who you are, Mark. That helps build the trust in backing you. I mean, you and I have discussed this many times. People are backing you over your projects. It's you that's important, and that's where we're going to go.
Yeah, and it's on the public record. One of Steve's backers is some bloke called Friedland. But yeah, I experienced that before Nova, before anybody trusted me. The first fund manager presentation I gave actually after the discovery of Nova was over in Sydney to 12 people around a table, all fundies. And I finished my prezzo and there was this pregnant pause. And then some guy leaned forward and he said, "You're from Perth, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "But you appear to be telling the truth." And, you know, it's tempting when times are hard to gild the lily and be optimistic and everything, but the more you do that, the more you erode your credibility. If you stick to your knitting and just bat straight and say it as it is, you'll attract the right sort of investors who are prepared to tolerate you failing because they know you've got a better chance of succeeding sooner or later.
So just on that point, you know, a simple illustration, I work in copper, just something simple as everyone going, "Hey, I'm chasing high-grade copper." What does that mean? There's too many superlatives that are being thrown out. So I'm working on a deposit, our last intersection was 15% copper, and right now in the market, 1 would be considered high grade. So how am I supposed to promote this? What kind of superlatives do I need? Do I need
Super high grade.
ultra high superlative? You know, you can see the knot we've got ourselves into, and everyone now goes and see the difference. And I had someone literally said, "You know, I don't see what the difference between this and a porphyry is," and I went, "A decimal place." It really is. We've got ourselves in a terrible bind where we can't even be honest about something quite significant.
Yeah, and you know, I think the bane of the industry, certainly in the small end of town, is most companies are surviving. They're chasing their tails. In order to just fund themselves, they've got to jump on the latest bandwagon, chase the latest hot commodity, but that leads to short-termism, which is the last thing you want if you're trying to find something meaningful. You've got to be strategic, which requires time, patience, and a deal of secrecy, which I think is not very common.
That's a difficult challenge, and you know, when you're running companies as long as I have, it's a case of you have to do what you need to do to survive. You know, when the cycle's against you. And so, you know, if you recall, 2012 to sort of 16, 17 was like, you know, death by 1,000 cuts. And so you had to pick your time and your commodities to be able to raise money. And, you know, so it's great, you know, sticking lithium, and we've seen last year, you know, lithium and nickel the year before, absolutely hammered. And you just can't raise capital, certainly on the public markets. And so you have to pivot, otherwise you're going to die, you know, on the vine. And our job is to keep the company going for shareholders, you know, to the best of our ability, in the hope that you get the speculative win. So hanging around outside Gamblers Anonymous is not the best place to be trying
Just
to
down the road at the casino.
Yeah.
I think the art is just steering a course between something being an opportunity cost and something being a stepping stone to something else. And not everything you do as a junior company is going to be the end game, but it might be a means of getting you there.
Yeah. And it's also about the belief in the project, which we'll probably come on to, but you know, it's all about having the right ground. You talked about land access, so we'll probably talk about the technical aspects, but there's obviously land access and then the technical points, which is Steve's speciality there. But we've always believed in our projects, and I think that comes across in the way that we've presented and we've raised capital over the years, because deep down, and so the projects that weren't sexy at the time, and we've got 1 and 2 in New South Wales, I've hung on to those for dear life, because I truly believe there's still a major discovery there, but I just couldn't raise capital for it. And then we got into other things, and so now we've been able to resurrect those, and we've got one joint venture going and hopefully another.
I've been meaning to tell you we've overpegged you. It's true.
Sorry, just got to
Now,
look that up.
so, you know, junior end of town, you've got to you've got customers who are initially the board and then shareholders, and you've got to convince all those guys. Bigger end of town, you've got a few layers of management to convince. How do you find that?
Oh, I don't know, it's okay. They're not too, if you've got a good enough target then, and you can justify it, then, you know, it usually gets through. Remembering, I've only been at Rio for a couple of years, so I'm still working out how the system rolls. But look, you know, we've got a pretty good team, very understanding management. You know, you can we get things through and we get things drilled.
And I guess the advantage is you have a number of those managers would be technical, so they'd speak the same language.
Yeah,
as
they
well.
are. So,
And you're working with longer timelines too, potentially.
sorry, what was the last one?
Longer timelines, so you can afford to.
Yeah, there's longer timelines.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot more money to get things through as
Yeah.
well in comparison with the juniors. But
Yeah.
having said that, though, I did find it has been easier in the juniors to get on the ground sometimes. There's other times juniors will have the access. So if we're interested in a project, we might approach the juniors to have a look at that and get on the ground that way as well. So,
Yep. Yeah.
In terms of money, are you running anything like the Explore program? The
No.
Explore program? I only say that because we were on it. We were one of the first 7 companies to be on the Explore program. And I think there was certainly a lot of suspicion about what BHP was trying to do, especially when you looked at the IP agreements, et cetera, and it was poo-pooed by a lot of people, but we were fortunate enough to get on it, actually looking for copper in Broken Hill, where BHP started, so we were trying to take them back to the future. It was an incredible program. They've taken a lot of ideas out of the venture capital industry, like in the tech, and applied that into the junior sector in 3 areas, business strategy, technical readiness, and then operational readiness. And we go along grey hairs, you think, I'm not going to learn very much. Man, I learned a huge amount. But more importantly, they kind of created this environment within Explore, which is actually not too dissimilar to WMC in our days. And I've been back and visited some of the other cohorts, and they've created this same thing. It's a very special kind of environment they've been able to create. And you get this $500,000 to accelerate your project and move that along. And I think that kind of funding mechanism is something that the major should really look at, and BHP should be congratulated for that. I'm one of the biggest proponents of that. How are we doing for time? Is Tim giving us the runaway?
How are we doing for time? 5 minutes. Wow. Okay, I'm going to skip the knowledge and
go to the secret
technology
sauce.
bit and go to the people and secret sauce. Okay. So what is it you each think is the key ingredients to make somebody stupid enough to be an exploration geologist? Over to starting at the end.
This is one of these things I feel really passionate about. I think across the mining chain, we've got a range of personality types that are suited to different tasks. And for me, I summarise it as the dealings with uncertainty. So if I wanted someone to build a mine, I know what kind of person I want and how they deal with uncertainty. At the early stage of exploration, it's got to be someone who navigates uncertainty. In other words, they live with uncertainty. I think that's what we don't understand enough about the exploration to mining value chain, is across it, the style of people changes. In other words, we're very diverse and we should be incredibly different across the whole value chain.
Maggie?
I don't know. I think the explorationists, we think a little bit differently. We're a bit more persistent. There's been times where I've just been, you walk to the top of the hill just to see what's there, that kind of thing. A lot of curiosity and just working through the problems and just chipping away at it until you find something, really. Yeah.
The people, well, it's about the people. So, as I mentioned, actually, Mark, Steve, and myself were at WMC, Western Mining Corporation, and under Roy Woodall, and he managed to create the most amazing environment with different personalities within it. But we were all young Turks when we were employed there, cheap immigrant labour from England back in the day, in the late 80s, and that sort of actually went through a lot of Western mining. As you know, there's a great cohort, diaspora of WMC employees. But there was something very special about the exploration division, whereby they just managed to accumulate the most amazing array of sort of free-thinking people to come up with ideas who are very technically driven, and were given the freedom to explore those ideas. And that's certainly the common theme between Mark's companies as well. And I know Steve's got the same thing, about giving the people that work for you the freedom to do what they do. And that's difficult when you're in a junior explorer, sending people on courses, educating them and allowing them that freedom to do that. But that culture has stayed with most of us that worked with Western Mining, throughout our careers, and it's definitely the secret sauce to get the three things to fit together.
Yeah, those of you who've worked with exploration geos will probably notice that they tend to be the slightly weirder people in the organisation. They're sort of a bit more lateral thinking, free thinking, unconventional, anti-establishment, whatever.
And that's all the story.
Yeah. And a key thing is, I think you've got to be prepared to fail, because you will spend most of your time failing. You only need to succeed once, and if you're afraid to fail, you'll never try. But the flip side of that coin is the organisation you're in has got to be prepared to let you fail. But a lot of companies won't do that. So it's a rare combination when the person with the right personality is in the right sort of setting to allow them to do their thing. And everybody here has done their thing and been successful. And that what we need from companies is the recognition that they need those wild guys and girls to keep the whole show going. So I'll finish there because I'm feeling under pressure.
Look, I've just got a front row seat. That's all. Now, a couple of questions that have come in from the crowd. Thank you to everyone who's submitted a question. Unfortunately, we won't have time to get through all of them, but I'll start with the most popular. Do you think the next great WA discovery will be found at depth, as most of the large surface discoveries have already been found, or is it worth going elsewhere? That's a real crystal ball gazing question.
It's in
right
the top
there.
2 metres of some salt lakes at Salmon Gums and Norseman, which is the project we're developing right now. So, yeah.
No, it's on Rio Tinto's lease.
It's not much depth at all, is it?
I still think WA has lots to give, lots and lots.
Yeah.
Yeah, at depth.
At depth.
At depth.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's quite a remarkable place because obviously we found our things in the salt lake there, but I don't know whether people are aware, there's been the world's biggest titanium discovery just up the road at Three Springs. It's 10 times bigger than the world's global titanium resource prior to its discovery, and it's a little known company in the UK. They're listed on AIM, and it's enormous, and it's like everyone's worked there, everyone's driven over it, everyone's done all those things, and it was just sitting there in plain sight waiting for someone to stick a drill hole into it. So huge potential here still.
Amazing. This one comes with a little bit of a clip. I love it. It says, are the West Perth stockbroker-driven neurology fly-by-nighters the price we have to pay for genuine explorers? And how do you tell the difference? Whoever submitted that one.
We pay you the big bucks, Mark.
I don't know if any of you guys fit into that description.
Yes, it's the price you have to pay. I don't know about the second bit.
The stockbroker-driven fly-by-nighters. Yeah.
Look, being on at the coalface, it is actually a relatively small amount of companies that might be doing that. Hard to get away with things nowadays. There might be a lot of people who don't perhaps understand the exploration process. They're running companies, perhaps don't know what they're doing. That's not quite right, but don't have the experience to really do a good job. And I think that leads to a lot of wasted dollars. But the percentage of people, this whole West Perth lifestyle thing, it's a very small number of companies.
Well, what I would say actually is if mainly East Coasters think, Perth's the Wild West in that regard, they should try Vancouver.
Yeah.
Vancouver is absolutely wild. And Steve has had experience of that because the company he's on the board of, Power Metallic, is working in Canada. I'm on the board of another TSXV listed company. And thank you, lucky stars.
All right, last one. Tell us about environmental measures and their parts in the future of exploration.
I'll have a go.
Yeah.
One of the things I mentioned earlier was about the importance of chasing higher grade or higher value systems. One of the ways I call everything that we want to do, whether it's heritage or environment or all these things, these are constraints. We know about them mostly before we started. The best way to solve them is quality ore bodies. You solve everything. We can have our cake and eat it too if we just go back to focusing on quality.
Yeah. Look, you can't escape it, not that you want to. Our phrase is just do the right thing across all the aspects of our business, and environmental is one of those.
thank you everyone for your questions. Apologies for not getting to all of them, but I'll hand back to you, Mark, to wrap things up.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for listening. We probably got through about 10% of what was on here, but I won't press on. Yeah, we all, there are challenges. There are always challenges. We'll still succeed. We just adapt. And as Steve said, I think, if you look for better quality things, they have a smaller footprint. They're less energy intensive. They have a smaller environmental impact. And we'll keep on finding things. And even though a lot of things are deeper, just cast your mind back to a couple of years back when somebody found platinum and nickel and palladium and copper about 50 k's outside of Perth. You never know. So we'll keep on failing and keep on succeeding. Thanks.
Very good.
Thank you, Mark. I think that was a great start to your facilitator career if geology gives up. Awesome panel. Thank you so much for your intelligent, robust and frank conversations. I hope that the audience found it extremely informative and entertaining. There's obviously a lot more to be said, so they are at table 6 and hopefully hang around afterwards at the front of the room to have some conversations to answer those other questions. AI is our next Miners Mingle event, which is a sundowner, so please look at our website for more information on that. We have a Get Into Mining camp coming up that Barry Upton will update us on at our next luncheon. And the next luncheon is Rob Telford from Tellison, so make sure you book into that one. And don't forget that our scholarship applications close the 15th of April. On behalf of the WA Mining Club Committee and the Emerging Professionals Advisory Committee, thank you so much for being here. We have an incredible community. Enjoy your afternoon.